Good morning. This is Jeff Sachs here, and wish I could be with you in person in Buenos Aires for your important session on employment in the digital age. I can't make it this time, but I'm looking forward very much to being together with many of you in Berlin at the end of May, and then, of course, in Buenos Aires in September. The T20 process is truly crucial this year, and I want to commend Kari and CPEC for its wonderful leadership in the year of events towards this year's G20. The topic of employment in the digital age is everywhere, of course. We don't go a day without thinking about the consequences of this dramatic revolution taking place in our lives and in our labor market. And we see changes all over the world in work processes, in governance, in employment, in income distribution, and of course, with many, many deep questions raised as to policy. So the topic of employment in the digital age is no small matter, in my view. We're in the midst of a tremendous disruptive upheaval in our economies with tremendous promise, obviously with tremendous risk as well, perhaps best characterized by Mark Zuckerberg facing the U.S. Congress today because of the infringements by Facebook of our privacy and the resulting really very shocking events in our political process in the 2016 election. Well, today we're here to talk about not the digital revolution in general, but the employment consequences. And what I would like to do in my brief remarks to you today is to talk about what I regard as 10 major implications of the digital revolution for employment and income distribution and public policy. So let me do that now, if I might. First, the substitution of labor by capital is a long-term fundamental process. What is underway right now is dramatic, but it's not new. We've been at the process of capital substituting for labor since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. We've had several major general purpose technologies that have come in waves. The steam era, the era of the internal combustion engine, electrification, and now I would say the digital revolution. Each one of them, a major general purpose technology, has an enormous effect on how we live, how we work, on the income distribution, on the types of jobs in the economy. Second, there has been a logic to this capital replacing work really since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And that is that physical and repetitive tasks have been replaced first by machines, now by smarter and smarter machines, and cognitive and contextual tasks have been replaced later, so that we've seen a kind of systematic transformation of the labor market by machinery. If you consider the major sectors of the economy, let me give you data for the United States. In 1900, about 36% of the labor force was agricultural work. Now it's 1%. Most of agricultural work is physical and repetitive, and it was replaced by a variety of machines, of course, and now smarter and smarter machines, autonomous harvesters, autonomous tractors, and so forth. Second, in 1900, production workers, mainly in construction and manufacturing, constituted 24% of the labor force. Today, it's just 14%. So overall, production work went from something like, or work in the goods-producing sectors, agriculture, mining, construction, manufacturing, went from about 60% of employment in 1900 in the U.S. to about 15% of employment today. What has grown phenomenally, of course, is the professional class, which was just about 4% of the U.S. labor force in 1900, and now can be estimated to be about 39% today. So this is the transformation of machines replacing labor in this systematic way. Physical, repetitive work being replaced by machines faster than cognitive and contextual work. But because of the digital revolution, more and more kinds of tasks are subject to this kind of automation. Third, the digital revolution is definitely science-based and engineering-based, more than the previous general-purpose technology revolutions. This means that it behooves every economy to be investing in research and development, in STEM employment in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, in order to be able to adopt and adapt these technologies for local purposes. So the professionalization and the science and engineering focus of the economy will continue, and especially for the developing countries in the G20, greater investments in research and development in science and technology are absolutely vital. There are very high returns to R&D. Those are likely to continue. A fourth point is the big shift of the income distribution. Of course, the biggest shift has been from basic labor, especially physical labor, to human capital, to skilled labor. This is where the biggest division in the economy has come. Those who have a college degree in the United States are doing very well. Those who have a high school degree or less are paying a significant cost of declining incomes and declining job opportunities because of the machine age. But there's also been an increasing shift of overall national income from basic labor plus human capital, or what we would call as labor income, towards physical capital and especially towards intellectual property. And this is now a large and rising part of national income. We see it in the huge returns in capitalization to the major tech companies. So the income distribution is changing because demand for basic labor is declining. Demand for high-skilled labor in general is rising. The demand for, or the returns to research and development are definitely rising, and all of this means a significant shift of the income distribution. A fifth point is that it's not exactly the case that old jobs are replaced by new jobs. It's a little more complicated. The loss of old jobs has, of course, been replaced to some extent by new jobs, but also by more school time, by more leisure time, and by more retirement time. So we have a diminishing number of work hours per year associated with the machine age. This, on the whole, is to the good. Machines do the work. Human beings are able to take leisure, more schooling, and more retirement. It's not a mechanical transformation from old jobs to new jobs. There's more leisure time. There's more retirement income. Definitely more time at school. Our societies need to plan for that kind of transformation, as I'll emphasize in just a moment. A seventh point is that in thinking about the income distributional effects, it's broadly right to say that older households tend to benefit more than younger households. This may seem paradoxical, but as income shifts from basic labor to high-skilled labor plus intellectual property plus the returns to business capital, older households tend to have more wealth. Younger households tend to have more basic labor. And so there is a age distributional shock underway where young people are dislocated. Young people who normally would have gone from high school to the factory don't have those jobs available now. And this means a notable intergenerational tension and the need for addressing the intergenerational challenge of young people who only have basic labor unless they are helped to get the schooling, the skills, the training, the income that they will need. The eighth point that I would emphasize is that within a generation, there is a widening gap between high wealth, high education, high innate ability households, and low wealth, low education, and lower innate ability households. The digital revolution raises the returns to skills, raises the returns to training, raises the returns to capital, and diminishes the returns to basic raw labor, to physical labor. In a wealthy household, parents take care of their children intergenerationally. In a poor household, parents can't do that. In a rich household, parents make sure their children have the extra schooling that they need to take advantage of the new jobs. In a poor household, parents cannot guarantee that. In a high-skilled household, people are able to find their way in the new economy. In a lower innate skilled household, perhaps the opportunities for work are just overall diminished. And so in the U.S., many low-skilled people have dropped out of the labor market entirely. The employment ratio, that is employment to those of working age among lower educated, lower skilled households has been going down sharply because the jobs aren't there and the incomes to the jobs that are have been reduced. The ninth point that I want to make is that the digital revolution in particular is going to continue to raise the returns to intellectual property. And we have a major question. How do we organize that intellectual property? This is not straightforward. The patent system privatizes intellectual property and creates, by design, monopolies. The theory is that those monopolies give an incentive for research and development, but they also create powerful monopolies. They create monopolies that have monopoly power even after the patents expire. Look at the power of the high-tech companies like Amazon, Apple, Google, Facebook, Microsoft. It's phenomenal right now. Their market value is more than $3.5 trillion, just those 5 companies. And so we have a real challenge of how to organize intellectual property. In general, we should make it more open source, more freely licensed, but that requires more government direct outlays for research and development. Research and development is to an important extent a public good because it's a non-rival good. Or if it can be a private good, it comes with high costs of privatizing intellectual property. So we should be thinking more about open source, publicly financed intellectual property. We should be thinking about ways to tax the monopolists more. And this is starting with Europe saying that it will put revenue taxes on the major tech companies, something that I regard as broadly appropriate. So the taxation and the legal treatment of intellectual property will need to evolve. That's my 9th point. My 10th point is that there are several policies that will be needed to address the employment implications of the digital revolution. Let me mention quickly 5 of those policy implications as my 10th point. First, we will need new kinds of training and education for the new kinds of jobs. Second, we will need income redistribution from the skilled, the lucky, and the wealthier households to the lower skilled, relatively unluckier, poorer households. The digital revolution and the labor market implications will call for more income redistribution. Third, we will need policies to share leisure time, more vacation time, more opportunities for paid leave. This is already happening in Europe, especially highly successful, highly innovative Northern Europe has many weeks of guaranteed paid vacation. Not so in the United States, where working hours are much longer and there are many fewer guaranteed benefits for lower skilled, lower educated, and poor workers. Sharing leisure time should be part of social design. A fourth policy point in my final 10th point is thinking about how to design what could be called human smart machine complementarities. How do we make the robots not substitutes for workers, but complements? In other words, working alongside workers. Artificial intelligence systems can be designed to fix problems that individual workers, real people, don't see, for example. So we could emphasize in smart systems the complementarities with human skills. And finally, as I mentioned in my 9th point previously, we need a new kind of intellectual property governance, not only for privacy, protection from undue government surveillance, misuse and manipulation of big data, and many things that are already being seen, also cyber warfare, not to mention that, but also the income distributional implications of the rising share of production that is flowing to intellectual property or is due to intellectual property. So these are 10 points, all to emphasize that we are in an era of major change. The labor market is in big upheaval. There are big income distributional effects, big public policy implications. Of course, for those of us who are academics and think tanks, we need to study these issues more, track them, measure them, do new surveys of enterprises in the labor force, understand, work with ILO and others that are studying these issues. But this is a big deal, and it's excellent that the T20 is taking it on as a major theme and that the government of Argentina has taken it on as a major theme. I hope these brief remarks are helpful for your deliberations today, and as I say, I wish I could be with you in person, but I will be with you in person in Berlin at the end of May. Have a wonderful conference and see you soon.